Hello, everyone. And today we're going to practice the Synoptic assessment, and that will be practice assessment 2 from this AAT website. Now, obviously, all of us you already know there are a few changes coming from this month, I mean September 2021. So the format for the Synoptic is a little bit different now. And the Excel or the spreadsheet is not part of the Synoptic anymore. So we only have to answer 6 tasks in the exam, and a few tasks will be writing as well. So we have done practice assessment 1 before, and today we're going to see what we have in the practice assessment 2, because we don't have much practice so far because it's just a new paper, and that will be the first exam that will be started from this month, September 2021. So let's have a look what you have on the practice assessment 2. This is like when you start the exam, they will give you some information. That's just the basic information. So if you read now on the exam day, you really don't have to read, because on the exam day, it will be the same thing. So no point of reading this thing during the exam time. So when you practice from the AAT website, you will able to see the same information. Assessment information, they are saying you have 2 hours, 30 minutes. So exam duration is 2 hours and 30 minutes to complete the practice assessment. This assessment contains 6 tasks, and you should attempt every single task. So there is no optional. Every single task you have to answer. Each task is independent, so there is no link. So for example, if you do question number 1, you really don't have to think what will be in the question number 2. So question number 2 will be completely independent, and this answer or question will not be linked to question number 1. So every single task have an independent requirement. The total number of marks will be 80, and read every task carefully to make sure you understand what is required. Then tasks 3 and 4 will be mainly the writing part. So they are saying require extended writing part. So obviously writing is the area a student always feels difficulty. And that's the reason I always advise to my student, make sure you do enough practice on the writing and you understand the key point. So examiner will not look at how many sentences you have write or how many lines you have write as a paragraph or essay. They will see, are you writing the key point? It's very important to understand the key point. So when I said key point, what exactly I mean? I mean, for example, if the question start with explain, if the question start with identify, if the question start with critically analyze, if the question start with um, uh, uh, evaluate. So this sort of word, when the question start with, every single requirement have a different meaning. So if the question asks you to identify, you don't have to explain. If the question asks you to evaluate or critically analyze, you really don't have to identify. So this sort of thing you have to know, and only the way you can get it so quick if you've done enough practice. And then the rest of the things I think you already know. You can use the minus sign or bracket for showing both negative, and you can use the dot for showing the pence after the number. So I think this one not be very difficult. Let's have a look what we have on the question. Let's start with the assessment. The first one, task number 1, obviously this question will be from the ethics. Little bit calculation will be here, but that will be linked to the ethics. So let's have a look what we have here. The first one we have here, we can see they are saying this task is based on a workplace scenario separate to the rest of the assessment. An accountant, Wajid, has recently started work at Hook Limited, a large organization with many employees. He is trying to apply the ethical code to a conceptual framework to an ethical problem he is facing at work. He is currently evaluating threats to his fundamental principles. Now, you should have a very good understanding of the ethical code so that as soon as you read a scenario, you can identify what sort of fundamental principle of threat is involved here and what sort of threats is involved in the scenario, or what is the safeguard. So if you read your ethics paper, you'll be able to understand all these ethical codes. Let's have a look what you have here. Complete the following statement. So to resolve the matter, the conceptual framework is state that was it must use. Now this question is kind of like judgmental question. So this question is asking you, so if you're facing something, so basically you can see the requirement once again. He is trying to apply the ethical code. So he's trying to apply, like every single situation, he tried to use the ethical code. Now, obviously, how he can do that. Remember that ethics is a guideline, it's not a rules. It's not like, for example, someone misusing some business asset, and because of that, maybe you said, oh, there is a rules if someone misuse the business assets, so I'm going to do that. There is no rules, it's just a guideline. If you see something is not right, you can do the best possible action. So for example, let's say if you see someone is printing for the personal reason, you can ask them like, you should not print from the office because it is not for the personal use purpose. So there is no rules like you have to inform to that person on this and that for the ethical point of view. So we're going to use the professional judgment. So you really don't have to advise of a lawyer, and don't use the common sense. It's the professional judgment, because common sense may be not common for everyone. So your common sense and my common sense may be not same. So you're going to say, to resolve the matter, the conceptual framework state that was it must use the professional judgment. The next one we have here, Suri is an accountant who works for Hook Limited, and George is a new trainee accountant with Hook Limited. So Suri tells George that sometimes there is a conflict to be resolved between an individual personal values and the behavior of the employer. So Siri personally value loyalty and fairness highly. So it is sometimes happens. So for example, if we join in an organization, sometimes we feel like they are not treating everyone fairly. For example, if you work in an organization and you see your boss give the priority to the people they are close to him, they give the bonus to the people they are from their family member. Let's say only the people they comes from the family member, they got promotion. So obviously this sort of thing you might think it is not fair. So sometimes the conflict could raise because you believe it is not right, but they do it. So obviously this conflict has to be resolved. Let's have a look what we have here. Identify whether there is a conflict to resolve between the behavior of the Hook management and the Seri personal view. So we have two examples. Here's the first one we have here. That's for the loyalty. Long-standing employee are allowed an extra half holiday for every 2 years of permanent employee with Hook Limited. There is no, is there any conflict to resolve? The answer is no. Because if an employee work long enough for the company can offer some additional reward. For example, if you work in a Tesco or if you work in a Morrison, if you work 5 years, after that they offer 2 weeks extra holiday. Now this is kind of a reward. Like if you work for a company more than 20 years, so you can get up to £250 cash every year, and that will be tax-free. So it's kind of a reward things the company can offer to the employee. So this one, I don't have any conflict because I feel it is like the reward because someone is working and it is equal for everyone. There is no conflict to raise. The next one we have here, employee are promoted on the basis of family and other close relationship. So this is not fair, isn't it? So if only the people close to the directors and if only these people get promoted, then you might think like this is not fair. So there might be a conflict that has to be resolved, and the answer will be yes. And then the next one we have here, a potential customer of Hook Limited has asked Siri to reveal confidential information about the Hook Limited cost, structure, and pricing strategy. The potential customer has offered to pay Siri for the information. So basically, let's say you work for Tesco and Sainsbury asking you from where Tesco buy all the product. So who is their supplier? Now it is very confidential information, but obviously you are the accountant and you have access to all the invoices. So Sainsbury can tell you, listen, I'll give you some money, but tell me who is the supplier for the Tesco. Now, obviously, you cannot do it, even though they're offering some money or something. You're not allowed to disclose the confidential information to anyone. Let's have a look some statement. Siri may never disclose confidential information to any third party. This question is tricky, very tricky. They are saying may never disclose. That's not true, isn't it? That's false. That's false because in some case, I am allowed to disclose the information to the third parties. For example, if the court asks you to disclose the information, if the HMRC asks you to disclose some information, if the person involved with money laundering, then you have to disclose this information. So not like it's not like I am not allowed to share information, never ever. No, I'm allowed to share the information, disclose the information in certain case. So this one says may never. That's not true. That's false because in certain case I'm allowed to share the information. The next one we have here. The threat that Siri is facing her compliance with the fundamental principle is self-interest threat. That's true because they are saying, I'll give you some money. So Siri will get some personal benefit if she discloses the information. So obviously, if she personally getting benefit because of sharing the information or disclose information, this is the self-interest. So I have my own interest, self-interest rate. Then we have Siri must resign immediately from Hook Limited as her integrity has been compromised by the offer from the potential customer. That's not true. So if someone asks you, like, I'll give you some money, disclose the information, obviously I haven't done anything. So by getting the offer from someone doesn't mean I have to resign. So I'll look for the safeguard. I will not do that. So obviously I will use the ethical principle and try to put the safeguard to reduce the risk or eliminate the risk. So obviously I'm not going to resign because someone said I'll give you some money and disclose the information because I haven't done anything. That's not true. Let's move to the next one. The next one we have here, Ian is also an accountant with Hook Limited, the manager of one of the Hook Limited main suppliers, has offered Ian gift. Ian has known the manager for several years. So if you know a person for several years, that means the familiarity trait could be involved here. And this person giving a gift. Now remember that the gift is not allowed, but in certain case, the gift could be allowed if the gift doesn't change your mind. For example, if the client brings some coffee for you, now because of the coffee, you're not going to change your decision. Let's say if the client brings some lunch for everyone, so for the whole office, now because of the lunch, you're not going to change your decision. So if you feel the gift will not change your decision, then this sort of gifts are allowed to take. But if there is a cash, if there is a expensive gift, this is not allowed to take. So complete the following statement. Being offered gift by the manager is what type of threat we have? Familiarity threat, because it's a long-standing relationship. To Ian, fundamental principle of objectivity, because familiarity trait is belongs to the objectivity. So we have 5 objectivity trait. We have a self-interest, we have a self-review, we have a familiarity, we have advocacy, and we have intimidation. So basically here, if I get too close to my client, there is a familiarity trait could raise, because maybe I'll be his friend and later on I'll not be like independent on my decision because I'll feel he's my friend. All right, let's move to the next one. The next one we have here, Ayn is following the conflict resolution process, and in the ethical code in respect of the ethical dilemma at work, Ian has collected evidence and documented the process carefully so he can seek guidance on the dilemma from his friend Anthony, an accountant who works for another organization. So I'm basically collecting some information. As soon as you see this sort of thing, if you're collecting the information, you have to be careful. The information is not disclosed. For example, if I take evidence from an organization, so I am not allowed to disclose to anyone. So when I handle any confidential information, I have to make sure this information is confidential and there is no way I should disclose it, or I will not take a chance that confidentiality can be break. Complete the following statement. In relation to the evidence and documentation, I must be particularly careful to ensure the fundamental principle of confidentiality, because I'm handling some confidential documents for my client. Then obviously I need to make sure the confidentiality is kept, it's not broke. Then the next one we have Ellie is an accountant who works for a professional accountancy firm. She has a client who has been involved in counseling criminal property. So she has a client who is involved with counseling the criminal property. Ellie has reported the client to the relevant authority and has told the client about this. So basically, what Ellie did, Ellie has reported the client. So she said about the client to the authority, maybe the National Crime Agency, or maybe the audit, the ethics committee, or maybe the money laundering officer, MLRO. So basically, she informed the right authority, and by that same time, she also informed the client, like, I already informed about you because you have some property that is not legit. So what will happen? The client will try to hide it, isn't it? For example, let's say you see someone is stealing a car and you call the police because you believe he is stealing the car, and by the time you tell that person, I call the police because I feel you are stealing the car, so that person will not be there anymore, he will run away. So if this is a situation, we call it tipping off. Tipping off means like you giving some indication to the client that you inform the authority. So obviously in this case, tipping off is like a criminal offense, so you're not allowed to give the tipping off, because that will warn the client and the client will do something so that you're not going to find the actual result that you're looking for. So Ellie has committed the criminal offense of tipping off. So tipping off means you are giving the indication of the client like you already informed the authority. Then the last one from the activity one, the task one, you can see here, Luke is an accountant in a practice working as a sole practitioner. Sole practitioner means he works for himself, like a self-employed. So basically he have no one to report. Let's say I am a accountant, I don't have anyone, so I just work for my client. Now if I know some of my client involved with the money laundering, so I don't have MLRO, I don't have any committee to report. So in this case I have to report to the NCA because I don't have anyone to report. But if I work in industry, if I work in organization, then I have a lot of people to report. Like I have a ethical committee, I have a money laundering officer. So if something is not right, I'm going to tell him. But when I'm a sole practitioner, I have no one to report. In this case, I have to report to NCA, National Crime Agency. Remember that. It's the same question said you work in a company. That time you're not going to inform the NCA because that time you have a people to report. So you have to report this matter. Luke should disclose the confidential information on this matter directly to NCA, National Crime Agency. The reason I'm going to tell the NCA because I have no one to tell because I'm a sole practitioner. I work alone. All right, let's move to the next one then. Let's have a look what you have on the next question. The next question we have, that is again with ethics, but it will be a little bit calculation. And this question for the 12 marks. So let's have a look what we have here. This task is based on the workplace scenario of a new place who have a year end on 31st of December. Today's date is 15 January 2018. You are checking the non-current asset register. A van acquired on 1st of January, acquired means like purchased on 1st of January, has been included, and you find the related purchase invoice. So from this is the supplier to the new place is our company. So the company received the invoice, they are the customer, and from there the supplier who sent the invoice, because they send some product to us and we have to pay for that. That's why they're sending the invoice. Date of the tax point, 1st of January is the tax point date. We can say the invoice date. So what did we buy? 1.6 liter van. We have purchased a van for £8,000. 12-month road fund license, £200. We buy a road fund license, £200. And 36-month servicing, that is £1,800. So remember that from here, what we can capitalize and what we cannot capitalize is very important. Only the cost or part of the cost that we capitalize, that is belongs to the asset. For example, if I buy a computer, then the monitor is the part of the computer, the keyboard, the mouse is the part of the computer, and maybe the Windows is part of the computer. But the Microsoft Word, the software, any sort of software like QuickBooks Zero, this is not part of the computer. So if I spend for any software, that will not be the part of the cost. I cannot capitalize. So if I buy a computer and if I have to pay the delivery cost, the delivery cost can be the part of the cost, because without delivery, I cannot have the product. Now, if I have to install the product, for example, asset, for example, if I receive the computer, but I don't know how to install it, if I call someone and if this person charges £50 from me, so 50% I will be able to add it with the cost. So we understand if something that is relevant to bring the asset into the relevant location, or maybe without this, like for example, if I buy building without paying the solicitor for the lease, I will not be able to buy the asset. So the solicitor fee can be added to the cost. So if something is very essential part of the asset, and without this, if we cannot like make the asset ready to go, then that time this cost we will be able to add it. Otherwise, any additional cost, servicing, maintenance, this cost is not part of the capitalization. So you cannot capitalize this sort of cost. That will be the expense. So here we can see the cost for the van is 8,000, and the road fund license, it could be the road tax or something like that. So this is not part of the van. Then servicing, it could be like breakdown and sort of servicing. This is not part of the asset. So these two, 200 and 1800, we will not be able to capitalize on the non-current asset register. Remember that. Let's have a look. What is the question here? Here says you establish that new place are a VAT registered business and all VAT correctly posted to the VAT control account. That means if the business is a VAT registered, then VAT is not the cost. So for example, £2,000 that we paid for the VAT, this one I'm going to claim back, isn't it? So at the end of the VAT period, I'm going to claim back all the input VAT. So this 2,000 will come back to me. So VAT is not the cost for me. Then we have in the ledger account, the purchase was entered as, so in the ledger account, we have a vehicle at cost 10,000, VAT 2,000, and bank 12,000. So from the bank, we paid 12,000. We understand it. For the vehicle, we paid 10 and 2,000 is the VAT. So VAT is not the cost anyway. But from this 10,000, remember that from this 10,000, I'll not be able to capitalize everything on the non-current register, because this 200 for the road fund license and 1,800 for the servicing is not part of the van. Let's have a look. What is the requirement here? Complete the following sentence below to show the correct treatment of this invoice. The correct value to be included on the non-current asset register for the cost of the van is 8,000, isn't it? We know it, because 200 and the 3,600 will not be able, 1,800 will not be able to include that. 200 for the road fund and 1,800 for the servicing. So this is not part of the van. So the van actual cost is 8,000. So this one I'm going to record on the non-current asset register. Then the road fund and license should be posted to expense, because anything that is not capitalized, that is not going to the balance sheet, that will be treated on the P&L account as an operating expense. All right, then we have, you need to adjust for the 36-month service payment. So now we will have to calculate the prepayment. Select the correct adjustment for the service payment for the year ended 2018. So basically, you can see our year is started 1st of January 2018, and year is closing 31st December. And we paid £1,800 for 36 months. So if we paid 36 months, if we paid 1,800, and that means 36 months means 3 years, isn't it? So you paid £1,800 for 3 years, 36 months. And we are just calculating for this year. According to the matching concept, we have to match the transaction. So for this year, I only can take the expense is relevant to only 12 months, not for the 36 months. So £1,800 is not for 1 year, is for 3 years. So 2 years I paid in advance. So if I paid in advance, we called it prepayment. So we said out of 1,800, divide by 36 and times by 12, because I can take only 12 months. So that will give me 600. So 600 relevant to this year. So out of 1,800, 600 relevant to this year, and the 1,200 is prepayment. So that means I paid in advance. 1,200 I paid in advance. That is a prepayment. So I'm going to say there is a prepayment here, 1,200, because I paid in advance. £1,800 I paid in advance. All right, let's move to the next one. The next one we have here, this is for the depreciation. They are saying the adjustment for the treatment of the invoice for the van has been made. Okay, you are recording the annual depreciation charge for the new van. The depreciation is 25% straight line. Straight line, there is no problem. So you find the cost price and you multiply with the person. That's it, isn't it? So our cost is £8,000 for the van and 25% is straight line, and that will give us £2,000 per year. So per year depreciation will be £2,000. Now for the journal for the depreciation is very simple. All of us, we know it. So depreciation is debit and the accumulated depreciation is credit. So depreciation will be debit 2,000, and that is linked to P&L account, profit and loss account, and ACC depreciation, that is accumulated depreciation, that is credit 2,000, and that will be linked to SOFP, because accumulated depreciation we take away from the cost in the financial statement to find the carrying value. So we said, all right, it's not difficult. So we're going to choose here depreciation charges debit and accumulated depreciation. Let's have a look. That's a credit, and the amount will be 2,000. All right, then we have the next one. The next one we have here, they are saying, complete the following statement about the overall effect on the business profit after correcting the vehicle and the depreciation. The new place profit for the year will be lower or higher? Of course, lower. The reason the profit will be lower because the depreciation is expense. For example, if my income was 1,000 and if, let's say my income was 10,000, and if I minus 2,000 from the income now because of the 2,000 is the depreciation, so my new profit will be 8,000, not 10,000 anymore. So it's quite simple. So depreciation is the expense, and because of this expense, my profit will go down. All right, then the next one we have here. While reviewing the non-current asset register, you identify another error. An incorrect amount of VAT has been claimed, resulting 1,100 too much being reclaimed. Despite discussing this with your manager, no action has been taken to change the VAT treatment either in the accounts or with the HMRC. You consider consulting a technical helpline outside of your organization, which has been set up by your local colleague to determine what you should do next. Now, identify which of your fundamental principle would be under threat if you call the helpline. It's very, very important to understand, because if I call the helpline, they'll ask you what happened, what is the story. Now, you will tell all the confidential information. So obviously, if you tell that your confidentiality will be threatened here, the fundamental principle. We have a 5 fundamental principle, that is Dr. Pico, isn't it? So we have professionalism, we have integrity, we have a confidentiality, we have a competence and due care, and we have objectivity. So this is the 5 fundamental principle we have to know. I have some ethic lesson on, obviously, like if you watch that ethical videos, you'll understand everything about the ethics. All right, so let's have a look on the next one. The next one we have here, it says, you decided not to consult the technical helpline, so you must now consider your position with regards to the ethical code. Okay, identify what further action. So remember, the first thing is I never disclose anything to HMRC. Remember that if someone involved with money laundering, if something, anything, I never disclose to HMRC. HMRC is not the relevant person. Remember that. In the exam, if you say HMRC, disclose to HMRC, no, we never disclose anything to HMRC. Even if I'm the accountant and if I know my client is not paying the right amount of tax or something, I can resign as an accountant or as an agent from the HMRC, but I will never give the reason to HMRC why I am resigning. Never do that. You are not allowed to give a reason to HMRC why you are resigning. If someone is involved with the money laundering, if you work in the organization, then you have to tell the MLRO, that is money laundering reporting officer, or the owner of the business. Let's say if you work in a partnership, you have to tell the partner, but you never tell straight away to the outside of the organization. First, you tell the organization. If they don't do anything, maybe later on you'll think about like tell something outside of the organization. So first you have to inform the directors or the owners inside of the organization, but never tell anything to HMRC. Identify whether the further action you need to take to ensure your compliance with the ethical code of this. So obviously what you'll do, or ethical code of the case, no further action, that's not true. You have to take the further action anyway. I should inform Mo in writing that my professional principle prevent me from being connected with the incorrect information submitted to HMRC. This is the one, isn't it? So I'll tell the owner, like, or the manager, like, listen, I cannot do it because my professional principal has stopped me because I'm sending the incorrect VAT information to HMRC, so it is stopping me. So I'm telling the owner first. Then the next one we have here, Mo has asked you to extend your review of the non-current asset register. You will need to check all invoice for additional in the last 12-month period. Mo has requested you to complete this by end of the day. It is now 4:30 p.m. and you are due to leave at 5:30. The review is likely to take 3 hours, so you don't have enough time to complete the review. Having raised this with Mo, he suggested to do it quickly. So it's not going to happen. Like, I have only 1 hour and the job is for 3 hours. And if my manager said do it quickly, I would say no. Stop for today, we'll do it tomorrow. And if it is urgent, then I'll tell you, give to someone else or involve some other people, because for me, it will not have enough time to complete. Identify which fundamental principle is at risk at the situation. So professional competence and due care, integrity and objectivity. That is professional competence and due care, because if I do that, obviously, like, my work will not be qualityful, or maybe the work will not maintain the sufficient standard. So obviously that will be compromise of our professional competence and due care. So obviously I would say I'll not do that. Identify what will be your action. So my action will be, I'll tell him to do it tomorrow, isn't it? Explain more, you will prioritize the review in the tomorrow morning. So I'll say I'll do it in the tomorrow morning when I come, because today I don't have enough time to complete this review. The next question we have here, Kyra Jackson at Ado & Co. find out about more attempt to reclaim VAT incorrectly. Kyra believes she has a reason to suspect that this was a part of a money laundering operation at New Place. Identify what Kyra should do next. Discuss the matter in full with Mo. Make a suspicious activity report to the relevant external authority detailing her suspicion. Never do that. Never tell the external authority immediately without letting you know internally, or maybe without letting know, like the people who is authorized for the money laundering matters. Make an internal report with Adu and Co detailing her suspicious. So this is the one we're going to do. So if I have anything suspicious about, I'm going to raise a concern internally first, and if it is not solved, then I'll think about the external. The first I'll think about internally. All right, so this is the end of the task 2. That is for, I think, 12 marks question. So let's move on to the next task, task 3. Let's have a look what we have here. In this question from the CVP analysis, we can see we have a break even, we have a margin of safety. So let's have a look what we have here. That's for the 13 marks question. This task is based on the workplace scenario at a new place. Today's date is 31st of January 2018. In December 2016, new place produced a budget for the sales revenue, cost, profit for the year ended 31st December 2017. So we are in 18 now, so we're talking about the last year. The budget was to sell, obviously you prepared the budget in advance for the next year. The budget was to sell 20,000 units of office equipment in 2017, fixed cost 600,000, average selling price 170, and the average variable cost 120. So the plan was the fixed cost will be 600,000 and selling price per unit will be 170 and the average variable cost will be 120. The requirement here is break-even sales volume and margin of safety, and calculate the budgeted average selling price if 30% markup on the variable cost was applied. Okay, so let's have a look. The first thing we need to know that is what is the formula for the break-even. So we have a two formula for the break-even: the break-even unit, that is volume, or the break-even revenue, that is like the value, the amount. So here they're asking for the break-even sales volume, but for your exam purpose, you have to know both. Maybe in the exam they're asking the break-even unit. So the formula for the BEP unit, that is fixed cost over contribution per unit. Fixed cost over contribution per unit. So let's have a look what we have here. The fixed cost you already have, that is 600,000. 600,000, that's my fixed cost. And the contribution, we know the formula for the contribution. Contribution means selling price minus variable cost. So my selling price is 170 and the variable cost is 120. So that means 30, 40, 60, 70. So how much is my variable contribution per unit here? So we have 170 minus 120, that's 50. 50 is the contribution per unit. So formula for the break-even point is fixed cost divide contribution per unit. So the contribution per unit is 50. So you have to calculate the contribution separately, that is selling price minus variable cost. So now if I do that, 600,000 divide 50, that should give me 12,000 unit. That's my break-even unit, 12,000 unit. And the next one is they're asking for the margin of safety. That's quite simple. MOS, or margin of safety, means budgeted sell minus BEP. Budgeted sell minus break-even point. So budgeted sales, we have 20,000 unit. So 20,000 is the plan budgeted, and the break-even is 12,000. And the difference is 8,000. That's my MOS, margin of safety. Is not difficult. So the break-even or this CVP analysis will not be difficult if you remember your formulas. So the break-even sales unit, we have 12,000 and the margin of safety, we have 8,000. All right, then the next one is asking what will happen if it is increased by 30%. So 1.3. So this is very simple, I think. So all you have to do, you have to see how much is the variable cost right now we have, and what happened if it is increased by 30%. So variable cost increased by 30%. So right now the variable cost is 120. And if it is increased by 30%, that means you multiply by 1.3, because they're saying now variable cost, if it is increased by 30%. So now it is 120 times 1.3, that will give me 156. So that's not very difficult to one. So let's complete this section. So he said my variable cost will be increased to 156. That's it. All right, let's move to the next one. The next part, what we have here. Now we can see here we have the following are the extract from the new place trial balance 31st December 2017. So this is my extracted trial balance. So you have a debit and credit. So non-current asset, accumulated depreciation 300,000. Accumulated depreciation means the depreciation is already gone from the non-current asset. So this is already gone. Then you have a direct material, direct labor. These two are variable cost. Overhead, this is most likely it is fixed cost. Remember, if they don't say it is a variable cost, overhead can be variable, can be fixed. But if the question don't say it is fixed or variable, treat this one as a fixed. Then you have a non-current asset at cost. This one we might need to calculate the depreciation. And then you have a purchase ledger control. This is like supplier, outstanding balance, sales revenue, that's my income, and sales ledger control, this is a receivable balance. Let's have a look. What is the requirement we have? Depreciation for the year has not been calculated. New place policy is to depreciate 20% on the diminishing balance. It's not difficult, because all you have to do from the cost 920 minus the accumulated depreciation, with this depreciation already gone, and multiply by the 20%. That will tell me how much is the depreciation. Then we have what? A depreciation expense. Using the information, the trial balance, calculate the following figure. The actual figure. This is the actual figure. Okay, we understand. Depreciation expense for the year. How much is the depreciation? So let's try to do that. So we have 920 minus 300 times 20%, and that gives me 124,000. That's my depreciation, 124,000. Number one, we're done. So cost minus ACC depreciation, and we do 20%. This is the one. Then non-current asset accumulated depreciation on the year end. So obviously we already have depreciation 300,000, and now the new depreciation 124 will be added. So it will be now total 300,000 from the previous. Now it is 124. So total it will be 424,000. That will be my total ACC depreciation. I'm sure you understand how to calculate the depreciation, because depreciation you have done on your management accounting costing paper and the advanced bookkeeping paper. And then we have a non-current asset carrying value. That's very simple. So what you need to do, you need to, from the non-current asset 920, we minus 424, the total depreciation, and that will give me the carrying value. So 920 minus 424, that gives me 496,000. Just didn't take this 30. So this is my net book value or carrying value, whatever it is. Then depreciation of the non-current asset for the year will be what? So depreciation is always expense. Remember that. Depreciation is always expense, is always debit, is always debit. Depreciation is expense, is always debit. On the other hand, accumulated depreciation is always credit. So let's complete this one. The first one was 124,000. So let's write it down. The next one we have done 424, 424,000. And the next one we have here, non-current asset carrying value 496. And the depreciation will be always debit. That's it. It's not very difficult anyway. So let's move to the next one. The next part we have here, they are saying calculate the actual contribution. Okay, I think you have to go to the up to see the actual contribution. So contribution means selling price minus the variable cost. So you have a sales revenue that is 300,000. So we said sales revenue 3230. From there, I'm going to minus the variable cost. Now I have a one variable cost, direct material. So direct material 2340,000. Then I have a direct labor. These two are the two variable costs, 180,000. Let's find it out. How much is the contribution? So 3200 minus 2340,000 minus 180,000. That gives me 680. So 680 is my actual contribution. Actual contribution. Remember that contribution means sales revenue minus variable cost. All right, let's have a look. What else we have here? So actual contribution, we have 680,000. Calculate the actual fixed cost, adjusted depreciation. So let's have a look how much depreciation you already have. So you have already overhead, that is 288. That's my depreciation overhead. So fixed cost. So I already have overhead, that is 288. They're saying adjust the depreciation. So depreciation is 124 plus depreciation 124,000. Depreciation. So we have 288,000 plus 124,000, and that gives me 412,000. That's my new fixed cost. So let's move on. That will be 412,000. All right, the next one is says calculate the break-even volume. Let me clear this one. Calculate the break-even volume based on the actual figure, 2000 actual figure or 2017. You must show the workings. Okay. Explain why the actual break-even is different than the budgeted. Okay. The budgeted break-even you already know, that is 12,000. The budgeted break-even was that we calculated in the top, 12,000. Now we have to calculate the actual one. So let's find the actual break-even. So actual break-even, the formula is same, fixed cost contribution per unit. So the fixed cost we already have. So the fixed cost, the new fixed cost we have, that is 412, isn't it? The new fixed cost we have 412,000 from here, 412,000. And the contribution, we have a total contribution for 20,000 unit. But we don't have per unit, so we need per unit. So 680,000 divided by 20,000, that will give me contribution per unit. So let's calculate that. 680 divide 20, that gives me 34 per unit. So 34 per unit. So let's find the break-even point. 412,000 divide 34, and that gives me 12,117. So 7.6, so we take it 8 unit. So this is the actual break-even. So you have to show all these workings here. The workings you have done, fixed cost, blah, blah, blah. You have to write everything here because they said show the workings. So you have to write all of this here. All these workings you have to include here in the box. Now the next question said explain. So this one you have to write. Explain the break-even, actual break-even was different from the budgeted. Why? So we have to know the difference because the budgeted was 12,000 and actual is 12,118. So that means I have to sell more unit in order to be in a position, no profit, no loss. So for example, if I like to be in a position like there is no profit, no loss, then I have to sell now more unit. Before it was 12,000 unit. Now I have to sell 12,118 unit. What is more? Why? Because the reason is, you can see my previous contribution was 50. My previous contribution was 50. So previous contribution was 50 per unit. And the current contribution is 34. So current contribution is 34. So obviously, if my contribution goes down, the formula is fixed cost divide contribution per unit. So if the contribution goes down, I have to sell more unit because my profit is going down. So I have to sell more unit to be in a break even. So no profit, no loss. On the other hand, before my fixed cost was only, let's have a look how much it was. The fixed cost was in the top. My budgeted fixed cost was 600,000. Yeah, and my new fixed cost here is 412,000. Yeah, so my new fixed cost here is 412. So the budgeted was 680,000, 600,000, and this one is 412. So what happened because of that? Obviously, if my budget fixed cost is reduced, I have to sell less unit to make the contribution. So for example, let's say, make it very simple. Let's say my fixed cost is 100 and my contribution is 10. That means I have to sell only 10 unit to be in a position to break even. So that means my break even will be only 10 unit. If I sell 10 unit, I will be in a position, I will cover my fixed cost. That means no profit, no loss. Now let's say if my fixed cost is again 100, but the contribution goes down to 5. That means I have to sell now 20 unit. That means to be in a break-even situation, now I have to sell double because my contribution is going down. So there is two reasons. Either my fixed cost going up. If the fixed cost going up, obviously my contribution, even it is equal, but I still have to sell more unit. Or if my contribution is lower, then I have to sell more unit. So this is a very simple. Either this one has to be go down or this one has to be go up in order to be less break even. On the other hand, you can see, the actual contribution is now 680,000. So 680,000, 680 divide for 20,000 unit, 20. So it will give you 34 per unit. So before it was 50, my contribution was more. That's why I have a less unit. Now I have a less contribution per unit. That's why it is going up. Number two is fixed cost also reduced. Before the fixed cost was 600,000. Now the fixed cost is 412,000, 412. So fixed cost is going down. But on the other hand, you can see my actual selling price and the actual variable cost is increasing. So let's have a look how. So you can see my total sales revenue is 30,200,000. So my sales revenue, 30,200,000 for 20,000 unit. So we said 30,200,000 for 20,000 unit. That means my average selling price is now 160. But if you remember, my previous selling price was 170. So that means my selling price is also going down. So if my selling price is going down, my contribution also goes down. Even the variable cost per unit. So if you have a look, the variable cost per unit, my total variable cost here is this two, direct labor and the direct material. So let's try this one. 2340000 plus 180,000. That gives you 252. So 252,000 for 20,000 unit. So 126. So 126 is the variable cost per unit. So it's the actual one. But the old one, the budgeted one, if you see, my variable cost was 120. that means the variable cost is also increased. So we have to write all these factors. So when you write this writing question is only 2 marks, you really don't have to write too much. All you have to say like my budgeted contribution per unit was 50, now it is 34. You need to show the workings, and you need to say by average selling price was before 170, now it is 160. Even though the fixed cost is reduced, but on the other hand the contribution is fall down a lot and the variable cost per unit is increased, and that's the reason the break-even point is increased. So only we have to focus 2 points here: either the contribution goes down or the fixed cost going up. So if any of this happen, then my contribution unit will be changed. So if you do some practice, if you read the explanation, hopefully you will understand it. It's not very difficult, but all you have to do, you have to do a lot of practice. So hopefully like you understand what we have done so far, and it will help you to prepare yourself for your exam. And feel free to email me if you need any more support from me, and I'll try to see if I can help you. Also, I have a mock question for the Synoptic and a few more resources, and you have my email on the description. If you email me, hopefully I'll try to help you if I can. Thank you very much everyone for watching. So maybe we'll see each other in another videos on the next part. So if you're planning to do your exam in September, so do as much revise as possible, because that will be the a very new syllabus and new area, and you'll be the first person who will attend the exam, because this is just started from this month, September 2021. Thank you everyone for watching.